Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation. And once again, I'd like to apologize for some of the delays between my posts and making videos. After the family vacation in Cali, I beat myself up really bad. 4 hour flight back with a 3 hour time difference. And then I intelligently decided I would schedule myself to open and work 11-hour days for the next 4 days in a row with the time change. And that was a really, really bad idea. So anyone who would be trying to put themselves through that, take a little advice and don't. That was, that beat me up worse than I was expecting. And when I recorded my last video, I thought, okay, I'm back in this, I can do it. And nope. No, I dropped hard, so hard. I sat down on my couch and started looking through stuff, and I literally fell asleep with my phone in my hand. And it was bad, but got a day off, got some time to breathe, and yeah, it's been tough right now. It's been really tough to kind of know what to start working on, what to bring, and what to start using. A lot of changes in the upcoming future. You know, we have anyone who hasn't already seen the Games Workshop Meta Watch video, I would definitely check it out. But in the last minute of the video, and I'm quoting this from it, Games Workshop has directly said that this coming week, we will see changes to Eldar Fate Dice, Towering, and a point adjustment. The point adjustment concerns me a little bit because is this going to be a point adjustment to just Desolation Marines? Is this going to be a point adjustment to everything across the board? One's hoping not. And what is this all going to mean? What is the actual change to Fate Dice? What is the Towering change? So with that being said, it kind of affects some of the choices in lists moving forward. And I want to see what these actual rules are about before I start locking in on a list. I do plan on going to a GT at the end of July, so time's running out to make that decision, start practicing it. So the only other best option I have is run through absolutely everything in the book and try every wild and outlandish combo. And the theme of this video today is Catans. So the outlandish combo isn't as much of a combo as it is with the new way that we take armies. We can take pretty much an army full of Catans, playing Necrons with just Catans. So that's why I'm starting to work on my next list, which I name Catan You Feel the Love Tonight. I'll let that one linger for a second. Yes, Catan You Feel the Love Tonight. So this army is going to have quite a few Catans in them, almost all of them. And I want to talk about them. And I'm going to talk about that list. I'm going to do that list in my list preview video that's going to be coming up shortly for my game that I'm going to be getting Monday evening with my buddy Josh. I'll talk about the detail in there, but I wanted to go over just the Catans, talk about them entirely, talk about what I see from them in a place in the game. I feel like they are a unit that deserves a little more attention because of how unique they always have been and are to the Necron army. When you look at the Necron army without the Catans in there, it is a very military-esque force. The troops, the Necron warriors are not good in combat, little basic guns, cheap for our army's sake, and 20-man bricks of them. They are our militia. And the units like Scorpex, for example, fall into a role that like Imperial Guardsmen have Ogryn, or armies like Eldar have like Wraithguard, which, the reason I'm using them comparably, or in the realm of Terminators minus the invuln, and the reason I'm using comparably is because of the fact that they are larger base, higher wound model that is usually singular focused on what it does. Either it's really good in combat or really good at shooting. Mind you, the argument about how good Scorpex really are right now, the simplistic thing of where they should be. In that column, they may be ranked lower than multiple units that you would factor into that same area, but that's kind of how they function. The Catan fall into a weird Egyptian god card kind of mode. where they just do, except for I think 7th edition, they just do ridiculous things and strengths that fall outside the normal realm of Necrons in general, where the most of the army is based around reanimating and standing up and being this undead skeletal race. Here we have these star gods that usually don't synergize with the army, usually can't take any of the buffs, usually can't benefit from being in Necrons, except the fact they're Necrons. It's almost like Imperial agents in a sense, like they're inbuilt Imperial agents that only we can take. Now, I said usually because there's some interesting interactions they have now, which I like a lot and actually hope stick around. And I hope that with the errata, this continues because of the way that what they do for the game state for Necrons and to be able to play these units. With all that being said, before we jump into the Necrons, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Turn the bell for notifications as we start to prepare for Columbus. You're going to see more and more battle reports, including some 40K on the flies, where I have my battle reports that are longer, more in detail breakdowns of armies, but there's going to be some other games I'm just going to be picking up as practice games, and I'm going to practice them. I might as well record them and bring them out there. The quality into some of the scoring might not be to the strength that I've been for the other videos, but that's something I'm going to be trying to work on and willing to take suggestions on different things I could do to change up to have maybe more bells and whistles. Currently, I'm editing on a very, very good computer. I'm using Windows Movie Maker. So I'll throw that out there. If anyone has any suggestions, please reach out. I'm more than willing to learn some more and see what else I can add to this and bring a generally better product to the entire community. All right. With that being said, let's jump over into Catans, because I've been looking at them a lot lately because, got to build up Catan. Catan, you feel the love tonight, and look forward to hopefully this working so I can bring it to Columbus and tell my players, and they say, what are you playing? I'm playing, well, I call my list Catan, you feel the love tonight. And let's get into the love of this. So what I'm going to do with the Catans and how I want to talk about these guys is I'm going to talk about the ones that I'm not playing in my list and why I'm not playing them. And I'm also going to talk about, then I'm going to talk about the ones that I do plan on bringing in my list and why I'm running those. A lot of them have, all of them have a very, very similar stat line. And we're going to cover that as well. First one I'm actually going to cover is the honorable mention of the Catans, because it does have, it doesn't even have the Catan keyword, but for all of existence, it's basically been a Catan, and that is the Tesseract Vault. So the Tesseract Vault is one that has a little bit difference in the wound characteristics. He has 24 of them. So he's a little bit bigger, a little bit meaner. He actually has guns that are regular guns, where all the other Catans have either Catan powers or magic or throwing a spear. He has guns. It's a Catan that's, I mean, the way I look at this thing and see it is it's basically a machine that is using a star god, a Catan, to be the battery for this machine. And so it has Tesla spheres. Doesn't get any boost to them. They're just the same as any other Tesla sphere. Sustained hits to 24-inch range, strength 6, ballistic. I'm sorry, 6 shots, ballistic skill 3, strength 7, AP 0, 1 damage. So Tesla, it's got 4 of them, so it's going to get 24 shots at 24 inches. Sustained hits is kind of cool. It's a cool spray and pray gun, and when you roll a bunch of 6s on sustained hits, it's going to be a lot of fun. And then other times that you don't roll any 6s, you're going to be like, wow, this really has significantly less output when I don't roll a 6. Granted, you're throwing a bucket of dice, so you should get a couple 6s in there. But there's going to be a few times where if you use this thing and you shoot with it, you're going to roll and you're going to have like 7 6s in there and be like, oh, wow, I'll scoop up a massive amount of dice to roll next. Maybe you have to do them in sets because you get so much. The big thing about the Tesseract Vault, what its real strength is the powers of the Catan. So this guy has, his ability is powers of the Catan. So it's just in the shooting phase, you can pick one of 3 guns for it to be equipped with, in addition to the Tesla spheres. And all 3 of these guns have different times that you can use them, or different times that you should or would want to use them. And realistically, looking at it, it's kind of like it almost feels like the Tesseract Vault has like a chameleonic effect. I know I just made up a word there, but it's like it can be a mini Void Dragon. Excuse me. It can be a mini Nightbringer. It can be a mini Deceiver in the sense that it is a weapon that is similar to what they do and what they bring on. Maybe a little better, maybe a little worse, but let's jump into those real quick. So the first one is Antimatter Meteor. And Antimatter Meteor, I feel, is most reminiscent of Nightbringer and his effects, minus the fact that Antimatter Meteor is indirect, which is huge. So it's a 24-inch range, D6 plus 3 shots. It does have blast. So when you're shooting this in infantry, +1 for each 5 models. Devastating wounds and indirect fire. So your 6 is to wound, mortal wounds in addition to normal damage. Or not in addition, I'm sorry. Wow, that'd be insane. That'd be broken. I'm glad that's not the fact. Your damage becomes mortal wounds instead of your typical damage. So forces some damage through. How strong is it? Strength 10, AP 3, 3 damage. So this is a nasty, nasty, nasty gun. It is a ballistic skill 3. You could theoretically sovereign this thing with the enhancement to give it +1 to hit. So you could sit on that 3s to hit even when you're firing indirect. It would give cover to the units it's shooting at, but you're AP 3 and you have mortal devastating wounds. So you can just do mortal wounds for damage. This is a nasty gun. Like this Antimatter Meteor alone, the Tesseract Vault has a 4-up invuln and and 24 wounds. Okay, so and I kind of glossed over its stats, its basic stat characteristics. So it's a toughness 12, which is a little bit higher, which matters. That actually does matter for some weapons because of strength 6. Its strength 6 is still in a column where it can't wound this thing. I'm better than a 6. And then a 2-up save. So this thing is resilient against small arm fire, which means that you have to hit this thing with big guns. You have to hit this thing with big guns, or it's just going to shrug everything off and heal everything away. It also has a 4-up invuln, so it's not completely susceptible. The biggest reason there's a couple of reasons I'm not running this thing right now. Because I'm talking this thing up so grand. We'll get to that at the end. But this is a big, bulky hull with a nasty indirect firing shot. Does this mean that like triple vault lists are going to come back for something like this? I doubt it. Couple reasons. One, and this also falls in the reason for not playing the vault, the thing is a pain in the butt to transport. Really, really is. I heard a story about a team that went to, I think it was the UK, and they took triple vault on a plane to the UK, or maybe it was coming out of the UK. But I cannot imagine putting 3 Tesseract Vault on a plane. Like it blows. I know that there is like battle foam in that you can get that is exact shapes of it. And yes, you could magnetize and put all the pieces to the side and stuff like that. But man, that just seems so nerve-wracking taking Tesseract Vault. Probably not the most nerve-wracking model to take. Silent King is probably up there for it. Transporting him is always scary because of how narrow the base is. But man, Tesseract Vault's got to be up there. It's a nerve-wracking model to transport and on a plane and overseas. So regardless, but as a single unit, as a single pick, there's a lot there. There's a lot there that I really, really like. Now, remember, he doesn't just get that one weapon, because what if that's not effective or you don't have a good target for it? He gets 2 others that he could possibly pick from. Next is Cosmic Fire. Cosmic Fire has Ignore Cover, Devastating Wounds, and Torrent. And this is one that okay, so it's tough to say. Like I said, this is kind of esque of the other Catans. This also kind of goes off the Nightbringer. Maybe Antimatter Meteor is more the Void Dragon because of the damage effect of it for devastating wounds. But the Cosmic Fire is Torrent. And this is Strength 6, AP 2, 1 damage, 18-inch range. 3d6 shots. That'll lay waste to some infantry if you need to. That'll clear something that is on it and get it out of combat if need be. If need be, because again, this is towering, so it doesn't need to necessarily leave combat to still fire these guns. But that one's big. That one's not bad. 18-inch range. And again, with the way that towering is currently in effect, I mean, it basically just shoots over stuff and then ignore cover. With the antimatter meteor, if you fire indirect, you're giving them cover. So you're going to be AP2 basically with that shot. 3 damage, albeit. The cosmic fire, you're already at AP2 and you're ignoring cover. So if the cover is giving you the boost to your save to reduce that AP3 down to theoretically an AP2, this weapon's right in line with that. I got nothing bad to say. I mean, you know when you want to use that, you'll know the situation, you'll look into something, and now the one kicker is here too, is though you have to select a weapon in the shooting phase. So this might be something you want to try and go into with an Overwatch. You would have to shoot that weapon in the shooting phase. So in your shooting phase as well too. So if you go second, you're technically not equipped with any of these weapons. But when you move, if you decide to equip yourself with a flamer, maybe because there's not a good target, so you take Cosmic Fire, that gives you a nasty Overwatch weapon. Nasty 3d6, that's mean. Last is Time's Arrow, which is definitely reminiscent of the Deceiver. This is anti-character 4-up, devastating wounds precision. It is only a single shot with a ballistic skill of 2, though. Strength 3, AP 2, 6 damage. So you're giving up one of the other 2 weapons in order to fire Time's Arrow. Tell me a character in the game right now that doesn't have Feel No Pain, or does, and has 6 wounds, where you would sacrifice Antimatter Meteor or Cosmic Fire to do Time's Arrow. It's one shot. One shot, yes, devastating wounds. Yes, it's precision. Yes, it's anti-character 4-up. When do you pick that weapon over one of the others? One shot flat, 6 damage. That's not enough. I understand why it's 1, because it's meant to be anti-character. I think the D6 damage is way too low for that. For what the Tesseract Vault is, that's not gonna kill any character, and it's one shot. So that was one that I think probably should have been maybe like a D6 plus 6. That's what would make the Time's Arrow worth making the sacrifice, because then you actually are taking a jab at and trying to possibly remove a character and kill a character. So I don't think Time's Arrow, I would ever personally pick that. Now, why I'm not running this guy. So there's a couple of things. Number one, towering is about to change. And until we see the change of towering, it makes it difficult to kind of perceive how this guy does. One of the biggest probably downsides that could actually take him out real fast is what Eldar can do with their D cannons right now. With the distortion cannons, you're getting right through. You're getting right through. This thing's big. This thing's floating. It's up in the air. It's wide. Legitimately, you're not hiding this. There's no way it's hiding ever. So with how towering works right now and how the Eldar Fate dice work, a Wraith Knight can literally look at it, and because it's 24 wounds as well. Yes, a spider nearby could give me Feel No Pain. Not going to get into the little nitty gritty of it, but completely logically, me and my buddy Zach went over this last night with a couple of numbers. An Eldar player with a Wraith Knight could look at a Tesseract Vault and say, I'm going to shoot the Wraith Knight at the Tesseract Vault, and literally roll 0 dice and almost guarantee 24 mortal wounds on the night without rolling a single dice. Great, that it's right there on pin, right there. Like we were doing that and going through and playing around with some of the numbers and dice and stuff like that. And it would be 23, 22, 26, depending on how the fate dice roll out, how many are left, and the Farseer, who's of course going to be nearby to change 1 to a 6. But it just gets to a point where he doesn't even have to roll a dice and he can do 22 mortal wounds. And because of that, there's a lot of scenarios that he can roll the dice and the number doesn't matter. And it can do then reliably 24 plus mortal wounds. So the Tesseract Vault dies in 1. So what needs to change? Well, Eldar Fate dice and the Towering rule. With Towering gets nerfed to a realm where I have one of two concepts in mind. I've heard some say, and GT out in New York is doing this, where you cannot see through 2 buildings. So if you line yourself up where there's a building and a building in front, then you're safe. Okay, that's an interesting fix. The only thing I don't like about it is, yes, you're lining yourself up with a building, but are you then also counting the base for some pieces of terrain? And in that case, do we need to reduce? Because some of the Games Workshop layouts are pretty heavy on terrain. And I don't want to see Imperial Knights go to a realm where they're not playable. Eldar Wraith Knights, they're here, they're there, they're in the game, brutal, they're not in the game, they're back and forth. But Imperial Knights get to a realm where that's an entire army that gets shelved when some of the big stuff plays go away. So hopefully that gets adjusted. I mean, that's nice. At least the TOs get that point for tournaments, can kind of say, hey, here's the layout we're using and try and work with that. But that's one possibility. The other one that I was discussing with someone that I like is, in order for Towering to be in effect, true line of sight, you have to be within 12 inches of that terrain feature. So now Knights have to stride and move across the table, but once they get close to that piece of terrain and they want to take that objective marker from you, but you have a unit that's on the other side holding the objective marker from behind a wall, now the Knight player is not screwed. They can go move up to you. They're within 12. Now it's true line of sight. They're able to look down, catch the back of you, and shoot you. So, and I think that is a really safe place that would be for Towering. I think that would work out well for them. Maybe in future updates, give a stratagem to Imperial Knights where one Knight can increase that to 24 inches if it becomes difficult. So I think that opens up the room to be fixed so that Knights can still be potent. But right now, as it stands, basically Imperial Knights are nearly artillery, where if they can see it, they can shoot at it. And it ends up getting really, really rough, because unless you go to the other side of the table and move that Knight around from every single angle, the Knight player has a wide move, and they can extend that as much as they need to be able to draw a line of sight on a critical unit and not allow you to protect critical units in almost any way, shape, or form, depending on the table layout. So once that goes away and things get a little bit safer, number one, every army in the game is not going to be loaded up with the biggest guns to blow up things on the table. They're going to start trying to play mission win, and mission armies and more infantry units will make their way back into the game that may have left for heavy weapons to handle these targets. Number two, the Tesseract Vault can pick up those units really well with its guns, because it has the indirect fire capability to continue to put pressure even on units that it cannot see. So when Towering units like Imperial Knights lose the ability to shoot those units down from far away, the Tesseract Vault picks it up. And I think that's going to be, once Towering changes, by making it weaker for everyone else, the Tesseract Vault's going to jump up. And so he might end up coming out and seeing play and stuff like that. So that's it for the Tesseract Vault. We talked about him a lot. He nearly made the cut. He actually was on a couple of lists in my concepts for a minute. But mostly it was, one, I wanted to run how I set up to run the dynamic of the list, which again, I'll talk about later. And what I thought was going to matter within the constraints of current towering rule. Me and Josh are going to be using the New York style of that rule, and I just didn't want to mess with it yet. I just don't want to mess with it till it's official and go from there. So now let's move on to the Catans, the ones that actually have the keyword Catan. So the first one is going to be the only Catan that I'm not running in my list, and it's very, very sad that once again, he is the one Catan that goes to the bench, the Deceiver. Now, we're going to give the Deceiver some time here up on the screen because we're going to use his data sheet card to talk about the base stats of the Catans. So the Catans have a 7-inch move, much like the Tesseract Vault, which I didn't mention. They all are toughness 8. I'm sorry, toughness 8. They're all toughness 11 with a 4-up save, 12 wounds, leadership 6, and objective control value of 6. So the objective control value leaves a little bit to be desired. I would have liked to see an 8 there, simply for the reason that if you have 10 man, like, just for kind of where squad sizes kind of fall for it, I feel like 6 beats an OC value 1 5-man, but you're probably going to beat up a couple of units. So I'd like to see it at a point where it would be maybe, like I said, that 8, but 6 is still solid. I can't really complain about the objective control value, and I need to see it on the table a little bit too. I'm being a little bit petty with that one. Leadership value 6, a little bit above average on that one. Not a whole heck of a lot of stratagems for these guys. The biggest thing would be knocking their objective control value away. So that's one thing to be watched out for. These guys at half damage could lose objective control on that. And yeah, they do have fly. Fly has been nerfed in this, so it doesn't matter as much. They are monsters, characters, epic heroes with fly, and then they have the Catan and whatever shard they are. This is shard of the Deceiver. So that's their base stat line. All Catan also have another ability called the Necrodermis. Now, last edition, the Necrodermis was the wound cap. You could only do 3 wounds per phase. And honestly, I couldn't even remember it. I think the edition prior to it, the only playable Catan was the Deceiver because of his ability to redeploy and to move stuff. I think that I can't remember how they functioned or what their stat lines were as much in that. And it's almost like I can't remember a time before phase capping. So I was curious on what they were going to do with these guys and how they were going to beef them up and make them able to withstand some of the damage. So with the Necrodermis, now, each time an attack is allocated to this model, have the damage characteristic of that attack. That is actually huge. So I was looking at it more, I'm like, oh, half damage, okay, no big deal. But then you got to think about it. Okay, let's start with the toughness 11. All right, so the Necrodermis. The Necrodermis gives, each time an attack is allocated to this model, half the damage characteristic of that attack. Now, it doesn't say rounding up, rounding down. I think that there's a point that covers it and says that you round up. This way you can't have 0, and obviously you're not going to have half damage. But so it doesn't say which way you go, but I would assume round up. And at first I looked at this and I wasn't all that impressed, kind of glanced by it. And then it was when you fully digest what weapons do and what weapons are in the game now, that this guy has toughness 11. So strength 4 needs 6s to wound. Strength 5 needs 6s to wound. It's not until you get up to strength 6 or up that you can even start to get down to the point of needing 5s to wound. So that right there, and then 4-up invuln as well. So that right there means that a lot of the small arm 1 damage weapons that you'd want to plink into one of these guys are really going to be very, very, very ineffective. just on state base alone. So when you try to put the big damage attacks to reduce their wounds quickly, their 12 wounds, those are also going to be questionable too, because you're not going to shoot, if you shoot 2 damage weapons in high volumes, ones that start hitting that strength 6 and 7 column, they're getting reduced down to 1. If you start shooting D6 damage weapons and you roll that 6, congratulations, that 6 just got dropped to a 3. So that is, and since it's having the damage characteristic of attack, this would affect devastating wounds. So if you, because the damage from that attack is treated as mortal wounds, this ability changes the damage characteristic of the attack. So before the devastating wounds are allocated, it's already getting cut in half and then being divided out as devastating wounds. Moving over to, moving over to his faction ability, the reanimation protocol. I wasn't even considering this and thinking about this originally, and absolutely love this. And this is a big kicker to what I'm hoping will work moving forward with these Catans going into a less towering dependent meta. So everyone except the Transcendent have reanimation protocols. The Canoptic Reanimator says exactly and this: whenever a Necron unit, all of them are Necrons, activates reanimation protocol, they will activate their reanimation protocol in the command phase. Heal for an additional D3. That means that if you get hit and you go to start your turn during your command phase, you heal 2 D3 wounds on each Catan within 12 inches of the reanimator. And then if you need more, a Technomancer can heal target Necron unit 4 D3 wounds. You can get these guys back to full health even if you go second. The defense is there. I love that. I want to see what that. I think that could mean something. I really think that could mean something and mean something big. So let's talk about the Deceiver now and why we're not taking him. So the Deceiver is a character hunter. His gun is Cosmic Insanity. It's got an 18-inch range, strength 6 attacks, ballistic skill 2 up, strength 6, AP 2, 1 damage. So like we talked about earlier with the Tesseract Vault, he also can only do 6 damage to a character. He has devastating wounds, precision, and anti-character 4 up. So it's exactly the same as Time's Arrow, except a little less range. And instead of doing 6 damage, it has 6 attacks, which kind of in some ways is a little bit better because you don't have to force through one hit to do a little bit of damage. Needless to say, though, it is still only 6, so his chances of taking out some of the valuable characters is kind of rough. There is some field no pains that float around in units. There are a lot of little characters he could potentially pick off in that sense. As you know, being able to, since he can do different wound amounts instead of the Time's Arrow, that's only 1 shot for that flat 6. So some 4 or 5 wound characters in a unit that might be providing a buff could get picked off by him, and you don't need to hit with everything. And he does hit on 2s. So his gun is not that bad. In combat, he's got what's called Golden Fist, which is 8 attacks, 2s to hit, strength 8, AP 3, 3 damage. So solid damage profile. He also has stealth, which means that he's a little bit harder to hit. So he is not inherently that bad. Like, honestly, his stat line and everything and what he does is strong, and he was originally in the list at first. Grand Illusion. So Grand Illusion is the ability that has been able to let you redeploy units and put units in strategic, and that's exactly what it does again. You can pick 3 units and you can put any of those in strategic, regardless of what you've already put in strategic. They don't count against that. Or you can redeploy 3 units. The problem with this is the timing. Timing is after both players have deployed their army, select up to 3. So once we finish deploying, before we roll the dice to determine who goes first, I could then redeploy 3 units. Paying the points for that ability doesn't seem all that valuable. Strategic Reserve doesn't cost points. I don't, unless there's I could see the Deceiver being something for maybe an intricate combo where you need to put a little bit extra into strategic that you can't because of the volume and amount that you're allowed to put in there. So there might be a reason to do that. But as far as just like standard in the Necron army with the synergies of it, I don't see his ability being all worth it that much. Now, if he could do it after you determine who goes first, then that'd be really strong. So he came out at the last minute. I'm not going to run him just yet because I like the way some of the other Catans are functioning. Now, I still have a little bit of time before I finalize the list. And that's one other reason I haven't recorded the video yet, because I'm still kind of mulling over some stuff. So he could sneak in at the end of this just because I get all the named Catans in one list, and which is technically something I can do. So that's him. Now, let's move over into the Catans that I have and will definitely be bringing tomorrow against Josh. First, let's go into the Transcendent. I'm not going to go over his stat line because, again, all these guys are the same. So the Transcendent has 2 things going for it. One, it is a character, which right now, at this point in time, pre-FAQ or errata, might change this week. He can take enhancements. And one of the enhancements that everyone is looking at and saying is very, very strong and very good, the Centriple Weave. Okay. I want to try it. I want to play it. It sounds really cool. I mean, having a 4-up invul and a 4-up feel no pain on this guy who can reduce damage in half, that sounds pretty tough. That sounds pretty tough to deal with. So, yeah, I want to try it before they take it away and say, oh, Catans can't take enhancements. Okay, sure, fine. He's not an epic hero, though. What he does as far as damage. So, first of all, he has a 12-inch range shot. It is assault, so he can advance and shoot it, which is important, and it has sustained hits 1. It is 6 shots at 2s to hit, strength 8, AP 2 for D3 damage. So pretty decent. It's decent because it has sustained hits, so it can move up a little bit more with it. The D3 damage is wishy-washy, but this guy can really start hammering things on a flank that your opponent might, things that are small, taking objectives out on a corner, your opponent doesn't want to have to dedicate too much to clear, deal with, or protect. This is going to force him to have to dedicate more because of how tough these guys, how tough these guys are and what they actually can do. Because now when we move over to its combat profile, Crackling Tendrils. It is again sustained hit 1 for 8 attacks. 2s to hit, strength 9, AP 3, D6 damage. Normally, I'm not a big fan of D6 damage, but when you back it up with 8 hits hitting on 2s, yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, yes, I will take that all day. That's great. There is a lot of units that have 3 wounds, multi-wound, 2 wounds, stuff like that. And there's a way to sweep through and pick those guys up real easily. And not even bad for just punching other things too, punching vehicles and stuff like that and trying to force through damage. Granted, a lot of the tougher vehicles you need 5s to wound, but hey, volume of shots, 5s, and D6 damage, maybe you get one lucky and through on them. Definitely the role is more going after infantry though. 100%, you can see their goal is for infantry all day, which is also going to be part in the themes with my list. All right. What their ability is, transdimensional displacement. Each time this model is selected to advance, you can remove it from the battlefield and set up again anywhere on the battlefield is more than 9 inches away from all enemies. Now, it says each time this model is advanced. So, no, you cannot charge after you do this because the model has now advanced. It just says that each time this model is selected to advance. So you still have to declare that it's advancing, and models that advance cannot charge. And if anyone tries to tell me differently of like, oh no, but you're doing this instead, so it never actually advanced and stuff like that, it advanced. Come on. It advanced. And rules as written, this model is selected to advance. You selected it to advance. That's what it did. Just the way it advances is different. Instead of moving it, you pick it up off the battlefield and place it back down 9 inches away from the enemy. Two awesome things about this. Number one, you're 9 inches away from the enemy, and you can charge and not charge. You can shoot and prepare for future charges and just be a threat on the table. And number two, it helps alpha strike slower units. I mean, 7-inch move is not going to be really getting you across the field all that fast. Now, I do like the fact that this one actually can deep strike. The Transcendent can deep strike down because it's a very, very good rapid ingress target. I think the Transcendent Catans are huge value pizzas. The only thing they're lacking, and I can completely understand why, they do not have reanimation protocol. So these guys actually cannot heal off things like the Canoptic Reanimator. They don't get D3 back each turn. So, and you know what? Okay, yes. Would I love having that on it? Absolutely. Can I see why they don't? Yeah. Yeah, I can. Otherwise, these guys would be really just horrendous monstrosities. Plus, they're the smaller of the Catans. So, being able to deep strike, being able to float these guys all over the field. I mean, there is so much play on these. And some part of me says I should put both of them in reserve, or all of them in reserve. Some of me says I should put them both on the table and just advance across. Might go 1-1 with it. Put the one with the weave on the field. Put the other one without the weave in deep strike, and rapid ingress it onto the field. Since that's that's a thing now. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing that I super love. So Transcendent Catans are in my list. I will also be bringing, as I like to call them, the tag team champions of the world, the Nightbringer and the Void Dragon. So let's go over the Nightbringer first. Again, same stat lines. Things that he doesn't have. He doesn't have Deep Strike, like the Transcendents do. He doesn't have Stealth like the Deceiver does. Instead, he has Gaze of Death as his ranged weapon. First of all, it's extended range. It went up to 18 inches from previous, which was a Catan power of 9. It has Blast, so you get an additional hit for each 5 in the unit. It's D3 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 12, -2, D6 plus 3 damage. That is a hit. That is a hit. And it complements the Transcendent Catan very, very well in the sense that it can hit the bigger, meaner, bulkier targets with an 18-inch range shot that the Transcendents can then come in later, shoot at that target, charge that target, whatever it may be, and finish the job. A big, big, bulky hit. Very nice to see that there, especially for the Catans and what I'm trying to do with the build. Over in melee, so he did get a little bit weaker in comparison for what he was. Now he has his Scythe of the Nightbringer has 2 profiles, strike and sweep, as it did last. Instead of ignoring all saves, ignoring invulnerable saves and everything like that, instead it has this 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 14, -4, D6 damage with devastating wounds. So now instead of every single shot ignoring invulnerable saves, you have to get 6s in order to do that. Kind of a little bit of a bummer. I remember how Nightbringer was before, and every once in a while you would miss a couple of those attacks, fail some of those hits, and then the damage would be severely reduced because of the D6 damage. So I did like the fact that at least you had these guaranteed effects to put that damage through. However, devastating wounds can still be nice for carryover wounds when you're starting to get close to that character in that sense. Now, the other side of it, he has the sweep profile, which he actually gets 14 attacks for. So he gets double plus 2. Okay? Hits on 2, strength 8, AP2, 2 damage, but this does not have devastating wounds. So again, he got a little bit weaker with the combat profile, but that it's still very good. Everything a lot of stuff got brought down. So, okay, he got brought down and he still has some of his similar effects. They're just gauged to 10th edition. So, okay, that's fine. His ability is Drain Life, and it is at the end of the fight phase. You roll a d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches of this model. On a 4-up, that unit suffers d3 more wounds. So you get him deep into the thick of the enemy, and there's multiple units, and he can do some mortal wounds, and you're taking him for his weapons. You're taking him for his weapons. That's a nice little added buff. If he healed off those d3 wounds that he did, if he actually drained the life, as like as I think of the way the ability should be, then yeah, that'd be huge and might be overpowered. Maybe at one point in time that was an effect that it did, and they tested. This might have been something tested that they said, ooh, that's a little too much for him. But 2d3 off reanimators is okay. All right, the Void Dragon. In my opinion, the Void Dragon is the #1 of the Catans this edition. I really think he is even though he is the most expensive, he is the biggest, meanest, and the best. So, his weapons. He has the Spear of the Void Dragon, which once again, that was a weapon from the previous edition, which was anti-vehicle. And now it actually has anti-vehicle. It's anti-vehicle 2-up. Has a range of 12 inches, 1 attack, hitting on 2s, strength 4, -3, d6 plus 2 damage. And once again, here's where I look at things like Time's Arrow and stuff and those precision. This is anti-vehicle 2-up, and it's doing d6 plus 2 damage. That's what that should. It should be more. Should those character assassinating tools like Time's Arrow, specifically off the Catan, should have a d6 damage effect to its standard damage. It should be more than just 6 damage. The Spear, it's cool. Strength 4, so it's not going to do a lot against infantry, which is kind of weird. The Void Dragon's really strong. I mean, like, physically strong, which is reflected in like its attack profile. You'd think that it could still at least hit at better than a Strength 4. But it's AP3, which is nice. And I mean, again, it's, I guess, meant for vehicles in that sense. But that's not all he has as far as shooting attacks. He also has Voltaic Storm, which is blast, so +1 off of 5 guys in the unit. Sustained hits 2, cool. 18-inch range, nice. D6 plus 3, awesome. So you shoot at a 5-man, you're looking at D6 plus 4 right away. And sustained hits 2 again. 2's to hit, strength 7, AP1, 2 damage. That's mean. That is really, really mean. Like, you can't not look at that profile and go, I don't want to get hit by that. Like, there is not any infantry. Like, sure, Terminators go, okay, but I have 3 wounds. Still, that is not a profile you want to get hit by. That's still 2 hits taking out a Terminator. Moving down to its melee. Spear of the Void Dragon. First strike. Anti-vehicle 2-up once again. And here's where it gets weird. So, I guess in combat, he's not throwing the spear, so gravity isn't taking into effect, and the magic spear is not being pulled to the ground and slowing down. He's only throwing the thing at 12-inch range. How much does this thing slow down? I don't know. That bothers me. That bothers me that it's strength 4. I get it. It really doesn't matter, but it really bothers me that it is the same strength as a Marine punching you. So Spear of the Void Dragon is, for its strike attack, is anti-vehicle 2-up, 5 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 12, -3, d6 plus 2 damage once again. So everything on its shooting attack is the same as its strike profile, except for the fact that it's strength 12. And there, again, if you're going into vehicles, anti-vehicle 2-up is awesome, because now it doesn't matter what their toughness is. You just hit wounded on 2s, and d6 plus 2 is a nasty amount of damage. You go over to its sweep profile, which once again, now we go Voltaic Storm, takes out infantry. Sweep profile, takes out infantry. 10 attack, so double. Weapon skill 2, strength 8, AP 1, 2 damage. So he's clearing base infantry up to 2 wounds like nothing. So nicely. And then last but not least, he has okay, and actually last and least on this one time, that actually works this time. Canoptic Tail. This has the extra attacks ability, so this is attacks you can make in addition to your whichever profile you choose for the spear. 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, AP 1, 1 damage. It's cool. It's free attacks. Why not? Now, we just talked about the Nightbringer and Life Drain and go, oh, that's too powerful. You can't have it heal D3. That's too much. You know, it would just break it. It's 6-inch. What was it? 6-inch range? Yeah, 6-inch range. Too much. It'd be broken. Here's the Void Dragon. At the start of your shooting phase, select one enemy vehicle unit within 12 inches of this model and roll 1d6. On a 2+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, and this model regains up to that many lost wounds. So Nightbringer couldn't just drain life from something and absorb it and gain its life back on an ability called Drain Life. I'm not saying the Nightbringer needed to regain its health. I'm just saying you called the ability Drain Life and it doesn't drain life. I mean, I'm disappointed. Disappointed. You know, I get it. It's draining their life. It's not saying it's giving him their life, but still. So the Void Dragon, he can drain vehicles and charge himself and get extra health back too. These guys are really nasty. Like, they did a good job of making these guys very, very viable, and I'm looking forward to running all of them over time. The Deceiver, like I said, he is probably going to end up staying on the shelf for this first run, just because of when I first did the list, I went all Catans, and I was able to build the list and have the 3 major Catans, 2 Transcendent Catans, and the Tesseract Vault. Then I pulled the Vault out for a couple reasons. One, mine's not finished being painted, so I don't have all of the pieces set up for transportation yet. And that's probably going to take me a little bit because I don't want to fully assemble it, and I need to drill and magnetize and get those pieces where they need to be. Hopefully, after towering, that might incentivize me to do it with how mean this thing is. It is built, it is prime, so we're making progress. But then so that was one thing, and then moving away from the towering. And then looking at the Deceiver, I have a lot of characters in this list. And the Deceiver seemed the least impacting to the general concept of the army, where I needed to still be able to put some suppressive firepower down. And there's still some very, very, very good, strong shooting out of Necrons that I didn't want to walk away from and not have. So, I'll be getting that list out here soon, as long as I don't make any last-minute changes to it. And no, this was kind of a long video, but in this one we went over all the Catans, and I'm glad I got to talk to you guys about the Catans and really look at them. And honestly, we're just doing this video right now and looking at them. There was some things that I was also picking up. Like, I remember reading through all of them and going, wow, these are pretty good. And then I stepped away from, and then I was like, oh, you know what? I could put all Catans in there. And now going over them this time has really helped me like study them and start thinking about how these things can work. And like I said, the Transcendent, while I think the Void Dragon is the strongest of the Catans, I think the Transcendent, it might be the most versatile of the Catans, most usable of them, and could probably pick up a lot more places in lists. Void Dragon's a very big model. That's one thing that has a disadvantage for it. All other Catans are much easier to hide. They're still tall, but they're smaller bases and realistically can fit behind most 6-inch terrain or, some walls, and can find a little corner to a rune to hide behind that you can't actually see them. So there's some possibility there. Now, the difficulty with that is with the change to fly, they're going to have a really rough time getting over that, especially, they have a 7-inch move. So once you move up, you're going to be able to see them before they can fly over and fly out. So that's going to be a difficult part. And that's where like the Transcendent Catan kind of has a little bit of the boost in that column, because it can just go, all right, I'm going to advance. And now I'm over here on this side of the field. And this is where I'm going to start working from. One of the Transcendents being able to take this in triple weave, it's a really, really tough Catan to take down on a 4-up, 4-up that's reducing damage by 1. That's really nasty. One of the things that, a saying that we often say when we're concepting armies, and you start looking at an army of a bucket of dice, and you look at a unit and go, well, that unit's got a 2-up save and a 5-up field no pain. How are you going to take care of it? Just keep chucking dice at it. Make your opponent roll dice, and eventually they're going to fail saves. And sometimes that's the best way to go around it. And with the Transcendent Catan, it counters that in a sense where it goes, well, the best way for you to not destroy me is I'm going to start reducing how many dice you're actually rolling at me with reduction of damage and then the feel no pain. So it's like, okay, even though I failed to save, I have this really strong feel no pain and less dice I have to roll to do that, and it matches my invuln, 4-up, 4-up. It's pretty tough. With the Catacomb Command Barge, I took 20 damage on that thing and lived because of the centripetal weave. So it's going to be a fun list. It's going to be a fun list. I'm definitely concerned that I have so many characters, but we'll see. Look forward to getting them all on the table. Guys, hopefully you stick around this long. Hopefully you were able to learn something. Enjoy this video. Maybe it got you through your work day. Maybe you're just sitting at home painting and wanted to hear some talk and go over the Catans and really think about this. I just hope it did something good for your gaming. Let me know down in the comments section what you guys are thinking. What do you think about with the Catans? Maybe there's some combos that we missed with those. Yes, I'm aware that you could technically use the Sovereign on them, but most of them already hit on 2s. So it's kind of, oh, you are -1 here. Cool, you get the 2 here. Sure, yes. There are little things like that that they could technically be targeted with. My biggest kicker is Canoptic Reanimator. All right, we've gone on long enough. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you all again soon.